So after this brief welcome, we will have some opening remarks by some distinguished guests. Dr. Brian Anderson, the Executive Director of the Interagency Working Group, will provide a brief update on the Interagency Working Group. And then we will have presentations first by the Department of Commerce's EDA that will talk about their significant funding opportunity, which will really anchor the event today. We'll have a Q&A and a break. And then let's go to the next slide. And then we will have a panel of other agencies which can provide significant resources to energy communities. And we're really looking for an engaged conversation through the Q&A function with the audience there. So welcome your input into the chat, and we'll try to bring those questions up during the federal panel. And then we'll wrap up with some closing remarks. That concludes our formal program at 12 noon. So the first 3 hours is sort of a plenary session, if you will. And then in the afternoon from 1 to 4, there are optional 15-minute slots where you can sign up to meet with a federal agency representative specific to Pennsylvania that can help work on your particular concepts for advancing whatever locally driven solutions you want to see happen in your communities. That's what this workshop is all about. It's for the practitioners and the other entities that are supportive of an energy community ecosystem to come together with federal agency partners and really advance their proposals and ideas to see their dreams for their communities come true. So hopefully that's useful. And again, would really encourage you to sign up. We have it in the chat. You can click on a link and you can go sign up to meet with federal agency representatives this afternoon. Again, that's optional, but you can do that in 15-minute slots. Let's go to the next slide. All attendees will be muted for today's session, but do encourage the engagement. Please do put your comments and questions in the chat. Next slide. I already mentioned the one-on-ones. Again, the slides and webinar recordings will be posted. And when you do put your information in the chat, do it to address to all panelists. Next slide. And I think that brings us to our first set of dignitaries for the morning, and they will be introduced by my boss, Executive Director Brian Anderson. Brian, would you like to go ahead and do the introductions?
Well, absolutely, but Briggs, if I might, I'm gonna say a few words first, and then introduce our dignitaries that have joined us. Those of you who are on this webinar today are likely familiar with the goals and mission of the Interagency Working Group. That maybe is what brought you here. The opportunities for funding into communities, like Briggs had mentioned, certainly I am sure is what brought you here today. And for Southwestern Pennsylvania, first, I do want to offer my deepest condolences on the passing of Richard Trumpka, who was really a fighter for American workers and workers around the world, a friend to the Interagency Working Group, a friend to what we're doing, and proud to be born and raised in Southwestern Pennsylvania. Last night, the Deputy Secretary of Commerce, Don Graves, and I had an opportunity to have a roundtable at Waynesburg University in Greene County, where we had an opportunity to hear from some of the voices in the community, to hear from those in Greene County and around about the path forward. As a mixture of exciting stories about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs themselves, and also some of the challenges facing Southwestern Pennsylvania in coal and power plant communities. And that brings me to the purpose of the Interagency Working Group and our charge from the White House. And so first of all, the Interagency Working Group is a cross-government federal effort to bring together the resources of multiple federal agencies, specifically to create opportunities in coal, power plant, and energy communities that have already seen economic transition and that will continue to see economic transition as we move forward. The president's first week in office, on January 27th, he signed the Executive Order 14008, which is the executive order on tackling the climate crisis domestically and abroad, and an acknowledgement that inherent in tackling the climate crisis is to revitalize the communities that have supported the economy of the United States for the last 150 years in some cases, and that have been seeing an economic transition already. After 60 days after the signing of this executive order, the Interagency Working Group released an initial report. I hope many of you had had a chance to peruse this. It is an initial report because part of our charge is to work directly in communities and understand where communities are today, where they've been in the past, and where they want to go in the future, and how the federal government can help with that. The communities I'm speaking to certainly are not limited to 25 identified priority communities that we identified in the report, including southwestern Pennsylvania, where coal is a significant proportion of the employment, or coal-related employment across the country. We have prioritized these communities first. And by prioritization, it means that these are the communities that we're going to first to hear their stories and understand the plan for economic development moving forward. I mentioned it's not limited to these. Certainly, as we move forward in the transition of our energy system, we'll also include the oil and gas communities, and those communities where secondary industries are reliant heavily on the fossil fuels that will continue to decrease our use as we move forward. So there's a lot of forthcoming analyses, including tax bases that are supplied by everything from severance taxes in some places and use taxes in others. And so those analyses will continue to inform us of the transition of economies into the future. So we're about making investments in communities, but specifically to try to catalyze the efforts that are ongoing, to coordinate across the federal government, and to assist in capacity building and coordinating in communities. And that's going to be a big part of today's conversation, is how we can leverage federal dollars into the communities so that practitioners like you on the call today can use these funds to assist with everything from economic development planning, as well as moving forward in economic development projects that might touch many of our federal agencies that are part of the IWG. And so the targeting of the funding from across the federal government, we identified $38 billion in potential funding in the existing fiscal year budget across these federal agencies as part of the Interagency Working Group that could potentially be leveraged in coal power plants and energy communities across the country. And so we've set up a website. The current website is energycommunities.netl.doe.gov. This may change in the future. We may make it a little simpler to be energycommunities.gov, but for now, this is our website. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook and on LinkedIn. And really, this is about getting the updates, because as we continue to coordinate across all of the agencies, trying to target federal dollars into the communities that need it during this energy transition, this will be the portal by which we can keep you informed of those opportunities, like even further technical assistance like today. I'm going to give a little bit of a call to action because I do have a captive audience here of practitioners in the economic development realm. We want to learn from you. None of these 25 priority areas across the country are the same. You all have different assets. Southwestern Pennsylvania has its own assets, its own vision for the future, and we want to learn what that is and how we can support you in your work going forward. So we want to support coalitions. We want to assist in building the opportunities for matching funds in the private and the state from state funding that can be used to leverage federal funding. And we want your input on our priority interagency work group work streams. These are stakeholder engagement, which is our vehicle to get the information back to us, as well as for us to target our investments to what the communities need, like Southwestern Pennsylvania. And then also we want to learn about what would be the most helpful in capacity building in communities, as well as lowering that activation energy barrier, lowering to getting federal funding. We have 12 federal agencies involved in the IWG. We don't want you to have to write 12 different proposals to put together comprehensive economic redevelopment plans and proposals into the future. So we're driving toward a one-stop shop for you. And so with that, I'm going to stop the PowerPoint, keep my message short and sweet, but it is my great pleasure to introduce the two distinguished guests that we have here today. First of all, I'm going to introduce Gail Manchin. Gail Manchin is the Appalachian Regional Commission's federal co-chair. Gail Manchin was sworn in as the ARC's 13th co-chair on May 6th of this year. She was the first ARC federal co-chair from the state of West Virginia. She was nominated by President Biden and works directly with the ARC's 13 member governors, the state alternates, and the program managers, and a network of local development districts to continue to build community capacity and strengthen economic growth throughout Appalachia. In addition to her economic development work, Co-Chair Manchin has made a lifelong commitment to improving educational opportunities in Appalachia. She's an alumnus of West Virginia University, just south of the border from southwestern Pennsylvania, and began her career as an educator in Marion County schools, and later served as a faculty member at Fairmont State University, where she directed the university's first community service learning program. She directed the AmeriCorps Promise Fellows in West Virginia between 2000 and 2004, and also implemented a statewide initiative, West Virginia Partnerships to Assure Student Success. From 2005 to 2010, Co-Chair Manchin served as West Virginia's First Lady and as a member of the State Board of Education, serving her last 2 years as president of the State Board of Education. She also subsequently served as Cabinet Secretary in the West Virginia Office of Education and the Arts. I'll say personally, when you meet Gail Manchin, you always take away that she cares about people, she cares about communities and families, and it's a great pleasure to introduce her today and have her part of this event. So Gail, I'll ask you if you would like to say a few words.
Brian, thank you so much for those kind words. And I would add to that everyone working on this committee, I have found that same type of commitment and passion to this effort. And so I am so proud not only to be the federal co-chair for ARC, but to be a part of this intergovernment agency acting group and to be able to work with these wonderful people and agencies that have come together. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Senator Casey and Congressman Lamb and Thompson for their support of the ARC, and also a special thank you to Linda Cruz Carnal for being a strong partner with ARC in our Power program. The representatives from the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development and the Pennsylvania Economic Development Administration, again, we appreciate your support, and all of our energy partners for their work on this initiative from the federal level. You saw the icons, the emblems of these departments, all of these: energy, environmental protection, interior. We're all working together, and that's what's going to make the difference. You know, ARC is a pretty unique organization. We are a federal state partnership, and we're built on the premise that it takes local, state, and federal partnerships to get the job done. And that has been the key to success for ARC since 1965. When it was created. So we feel that we certainly are a part of this organization for the work that we have done and for the work that we will do moving forward. Each of Pennsylvania's 52 Appalachian counties possess distinct opportunities and distinct challenges. And the impact of the downturn of Pennsylvania's coal economy have been all-encompassing for the local communities in Pennsylvania, as well as West Virginia and our other coal-impacted areas across the ARC. And our Power Grants, a competitive grant initiative, support the efforts to create a coal economy or to create a new economy where coal has been the economy in the past. So since 2015, ARC has invested $238 million in 293 projects, touching 353 counties across the Appalachian region through our Power Initiative. And in fact, and they probably know this, Pennsylvania received more power grants than any other state last year. So we have worked closely with Governor Wolf and his team, and certainly Sherry Collins, to support the projects for coal impacted communities in Pennsylvania. We are so honored to be a part of this initiative. I keep reiterating that, but the fact that when this group was formed, it really reached out to every corner, to every group that have invested their time, money, and passion into the work efforts that are needed during this time. The more we can get done regionally, and the more we can link together regionally, crossing state lines, the more we're going to get done and the bigger impact we're going to have in the total outcome. I just want to say, as the federal co-chair, we are committed at ARC to collaborate with you in whatever way we can to make our region stronger, and thereby creating replicable models that can make our nation stronger. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. I'm so sorry we can't all be here in person, but I'm so happy to be with you virtually, and certainly looking forward to the conversations and discussions this morning. Again, thank you so much, Brian.
Well, Co-Chair Manchin, I want to express my sincere gratitude to you, the entire ARC team, to their commitment to the interagency working group. I know it is right within the traditional lanes of the ARC, and we're just here to amplify what the ARC does. And so I really appreciate your contributions. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
As Co-Chair Manchin mentioned, the ARC is the unique agency with the partnerships with the state, and it finds its success through the partnerships with the state, and the state of Pennsylvania certainly is no stranger to that. And so I'm really happy to introduce Sherry Collins here today. Of course, to a Southwestern Pennsylvania audience, I probably don't have to spend a whole lot of time introducing Sherry Collins, but I will for those who haven't had a chance to meet or interact with her. She is the Pennsylvania ARC state alternate and the Deputy Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, or DCD, as we know. She is well known to the economic development community across Pennsylvania, and has served the citizens of the Commonwealth for more than 30 years. And Sherry has administered many of Pennsylvania's signature economic development initiatives. Since 2004, Deputy Secretary Collins has served in leadership positions within the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, including administering Pennsylvania's technology-based economic development programs, such as the Keystone Innovation Program, the Ben Franklin Technology Development Authority, and the Pennsylvania Venture Capital Investment Program, all of which have created tremendous impact across the state of Pennsylvania. In 2015, she was appointed by Governor Wolf to serve as the department's Deputy Secretary for the Office of Technology and Innovation, and Deputy Secretary Collins was instrumental in the development of several new and innovative programs, such as Innovate PA, Manufacturing PA, and the Engage program, Pennsylvania's premier business calling program. Deputy Secretary Collins also serves as the governor's state alternate to the ARC, as I mentioned before, and has been leading the Wolf administration's efforts to address Pennsylvania's broadband infrastructure challenges, working to ensure Pennsylvanians have access to high-speed internet at home, at work, and on the road, and it's a key part of our economic development future. So Sherry, it's such a pleasure to have you on here today, and the floor is yours.
Brian, thank you so much for that introduction. It seems to me like I should make this short and sweet too, because I have a lot of work to do this afternoon. We are in the process right now of preparing an application for federal funding for some of our broadband efforts across Pennsylvania. But I am truly honored to participate in today's discussion. I want to applaud you for pulling this together. As the federal co-chair had mentioned, Certainly would love to be with everybody in person today, but in this virtual world, it's nice to see so many names attending today's session. So thank you for that. I just want to give a quick shout out to, I know that there are a few members of my team that are on today's program, including Neil Fowler, who has been ARC's program manager for many years and my sidekick in this journey. There's no way that I could do what I get to do as it relates to ARC without Neil. So I'm sure that I'm going to get kicked under the table virtually for that introduction and acknowledgement, but that's the price, Neil. Sorry, buddy. I absolutely want to reiterate what Gail had said. You know, this partnership with ARC has been transformational for Pennsylvania, and not only Pennsylvania, certainly for the other states that are part of the ARC territory. And the Power Program in particular, I have to admit, selfishly did a little, celebration dance when Gail had mentioned that Pennsylvania was a big winner last year in the Power Program. And I have to say that one of the reasons why is because our partners that are on the ground, our partners who have helped to generate a number of great projects. You know, you don't do this alone. It takes partnership, and it takes years of building relationships and building trust with one another to be able to submit successful applications. And so I just want to give everybody a round of applause, those who participated in that program either last year or in the last few years. Again, we don't do this alone. We need partners. And certainly thankful to Linda Cruz Carnell and her team at EDA for the role that they play in our programming as well. We've done a number of initiatives with EDA over the years, and one in particular was the development of the playbooks that were created as a result of the downturn in the coal economy in Pennsylvania. These playbooks were designed really to provide our economic development partners and others with a playbook for being able to identify how to use some of these legacy coal-fired power generation and the related assets to help bring into focus their value as sites endowed with numerous opportunities for transformational redevelopment. So without the support of EDA, I don't know that those playbooks would have occurred. I also would like to just thank Adam Walters. Adam is with our Office of Energy and is on the line today as well. I would encourage Adam and Neil and Alex Swan and anybody else from the DCED team to just enter your contact information perhaps in the chat so that people that are on the phone that might not be available or might not recognize the team that is available to provide assistance to them from the department. Enter your contact information there so that people can reach out to us. We are here to be a resource to those of you that are on this call today. We want to make sure that we are providing you with information that you need, and certainly want to help you bring your projects to fruition. So Dr. Anderson, thank you again for allowing me to participate in today's session. I'm going to hang on here, and I can't wait to see what's next. So thank you so very much.
Well, Sherry, no, thank you. And when I talk about the mission of the IWG and it being a whole of government approach, I really envision that it is not just a whole of the federal government, but we create the types of relationships and collaborations between the federal government as well as the state governments, local and regional governments. Because I think that's what it really is going to take for us to create the type of economic development, the type of structural economy change that we need to see in the communities that have, in fact, powered our nation for the last 100 years. And so, again, Sherry, thank you so much for being here. And we look forward to creating those types of collaborative relationships and the seamlessness across the federal, state, local, regional governments that we need. And so with that, I'm going to close the initial kind of keynote session, pass it over to Briggs, because in fact, we have so much good content that we need to cover today. When you look at the agenda and you look at the involvement of the multiple federal agencies and then the opportunity in the afternoon to have the one-on-ones, I think the talking heads like me, we need to shut up and let the real practitioners get to work. And so again, to all the attendees, to all the panelists, to all the dignitaries who have joined today, sincerely, thank you. I think we're gonna make a great difference in communities like Southwestern Pennsylvania. So again, Briggs, back to you.
Well, thank you, Brian. And just I'll be extremely brief here. Before we tee up our EDA announcement, our EDA speaker, I just wanted to provide a little bit of color for the audience. We now are up to 115 participants, and we have some really influential and decision makers in the audience. Again, elected officials, executive directors. I'm looking at a title of the folks that registered for this, and it's directors, executive director, professors, commissioners, et cetera. So really appreciate the quality audience and taking the time for this. And why don't I turn it over to Linda Cruz Carnell from EDA to walk us through what has been a historic announcement that EDA made just a few weeks ago and share that a little bit.
Sure. Good morning, Briggs. Thank you for that kind introduction. And Brian, thank you so much for your work on the Energy Interagency Working Group. It's certainly a key time for us to be coming together and to respond to the Build Back Better programming that the administration has teed up. Gail and Sherry, thank you so much for your kind remarks as well. When both of you were talking about the critical importance of working together, I kept thinking about the word and the challenge and the charge of being difference makers. And that's really what we're about here today, making a difference as we face the challenge of recovering from the recent pandemic, primarily focused on coal communities, as we'll discuss here today, through EDA's coal community commitment. I'm happy to be here today with my colleague and staff member, Chris Casper. Chris will be running my slides today, and we'll tee them up shortly. Chris is the EDR for the state of Pennsylvania, so he works closely with many of you all on the line. I see a lot of familiar names and faces. Double shout out to Neil. Neil, thanks for all your work, collaborative work with both ARC and EDA through our comprehensive network of economic development districts, also known as LDDs. This is a tremendous partnership and a tremendous asset that we've been able to bring to bear over the years. And so Chris and I enjoy this collaborative work, and we enjoy the results that can certainly come from it based on our experience. Later today, EDA will also offer 2 staff members from our National Economic Development Integration Team, including Nancy Gilbert, who works in the DC office, as well as Zach Graves, who works out of Denver, to join Chris in answering questions in the Q&A session this afternoon. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that we're most grateful for the support of Deputy Secretary Don Graves, who, as Brian mentioned, was out in the field yesterday talking about what he calls one of the administration's signature efforts in the Build Back Better programming. $3 billion for Build Back Better in total has been allocated to EDA. $300 million has been committed to coal communities, so that's 10% of the funding, all to recover from the pandemic, to bring new jobs, to transform economies, and to use those funds to build a just and equitable economy, something that we all want to see happen. So this is honorable work. I've enjoyed a 33-year career here with EDA, and I'm just really honored to continue to lead the agency. One of the sorry about that. One of the things that's always kept me buoyed in our economic development work has been the ability to meet communities where they are. It's really one of the hallmarks of EDA's work. It's something that we do together with ARC and with other partners and with our rural partners. We provide technical assistance to communities who bring their economic development challenges to us. We work through our own staff. We work together collaboratively with our economic development districts, which have been designated to assist various regional ecosystems throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the LDDs. We work closely to identify problems and to look at ways to move regions forward. as has been the primary theme this morning, collaboration is key. We accomplish very little working in silos. We've learned that through our experience. So it's important this effort today to come together and to talk across our programs and see how we can work together is certainly a great opportunity for all of us. Just a couple little notes before I start begin the PowerPoint presentation. I would like to remind everyone who, many of you are familiar with EDA's programs. The EDA's issued 6 notice of funding opportunities, July 23rd, if memory serves. And all of those are part of the economic adjustment programming that's been allocated to Build Back Better. But I would just remind everyone that the programming is while it is the same in many respects, it being economic adjustment, it is in some ways innovative and different. So I want to encourage folks who are interested in the programming to have a look at the NOFOs. You don't have to become experts in them. That's certainly our responsibility, but we do want you to be aware of the fact that there are some changes, all focused on executing on the new investment priorities that the administration put forth in April. So that's really a key message that I wanted to pass on. We're certainly here to work with you. That's always been our objective and charge. And our coal partners, both in West Virginia and in Pennsylvania, have been tremendous innovators, focusing on diversifying and transitioning economies. So this is great work. We have great responsibility, and we take it quite seriously and look forward to working together. Chris, can you start the PowerPoint now, and we'll just begin our presentation. Great. Okay, so basically we're here to deliver a presentation to you on EDA's American Rescue Plan award programs. There are 6 in total. Chris, you can go to the next slide. So $3 billion is the total allocation for American Rescue Plan funding throughout the nation. We're investing in jobs for today, and there's 2 notice of funding opportunities that focus on today's jobs. Those being the Good Jobs Challenge, which some of you may know and understand as workforce development. Can you go back up? Is this slide 2? There we go. And the other challenge is the Travel, Tourism, and Outdoor Recreation Challenge. That's a 2-part NOFO. There's some programming that is being delivered non-competitively to states. The governor received a letter of invitation in late July for some non-competitive travel and tourism programming, and there will also be a competitive piece to that, which the Philadelphia Regional Office will administer, and Chris will be happy to help any potential applicants on. In addition, the second prong is investing in communities built for all, and that's through our Economic Adjustment Assistance Program. We have an Indigenous Communities NOFO, and we also have the Coal Communities Commitment, which is our discussion point today. And lastly, we're building Regions for the Future, which is includes the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, and also the Statewide Planning, Research, and Networks NOFO. The second NOFO also included a non-competitive component, which offered each of the governors of the states and commonwealths a $1 million for pandemic recovery planning. So those 2 opportunities, non-competitive opportunities, totaling, I believe, $18 million were extended to Governor Wolf already. Next slide, please, Chris. We're bouncing around. EDA's mission is to lead the federal economic development agenda by promoting innovation and competitiveness, preparing American regions for growth and success in the worldwide economy. We do that in 3 ways: increasing America's global economic competitiveness, supporting community-led economic development, and helping communities develop resilient and agile local economies. Here today, obviously, we're focused on all three of those prongs in one way or another, but the idea of resilience and agility, certainly as to coal communities, is paramount, and also the fact that we're engaging from a community-led economic development perspective. Next slide, please. Okay, so EDA supports local and regional economies through a variety of tools and methods. There's a hierarchy here noted in this particular slide, where we explain, back in my early days, we did a lot of basic infrastructure, and we may be promoting infrastructure again in the future across the administration. Certainly that's something that most folks consider to be a very basic element of a necessary element for their economic development futures. We also do technology, infrastructure, and business modernization. There's business support through incubators, accelerators, access to capital. We fund innovation engines through university and community colleges, workforce development programs, various research and development, and access to capital programming. The access to capital is often through revolving loan fund programming. And all of those elements certainly work together to build what we are all striving for, which is a resilient region, one that can survive economic challenges such as the pandemic, or such as sudden natural disasters or other economic disasters, perhaps a plant closure, or in this case, an adjustment from coal-reliant economies. Next slide, please, Chris. So EDA has 6 investment priorities. The newest one that was promulgated under the Biden and Harris administration is equity. You can read more about that on EDA's website. There's a lengthy definition, but obviously we're looking to promote and be inclusive in our programming to reach all communities, and as I said, meeting them where they are and helping them to chart a path for their future. So I encourage you to check out the equity prong. Recovery and resilience is what we're talking about today. All of our economic adjustment programming, and certainly the coal commitment programming, is by its very nature meets the recovery and resiliency investment priority. So if you're teeing up a project in that regard, we've already met an investment priority. We also are working on in the workforce development arena through our regional office programming, as well as the Good Jobs Challenge I mentioned on the previous slide. Manufacturing, of course, is always paramount in creating good jobs, and also in fostering private investment that facilitates robust community growth. Technology-based economic development is certainly an area that we are promoting vis-a-vis our investment priorities. In many cases, that is done in collaboration with various university partners who are key stakeholders in regions. Environmentally sustainable development, this is, of course, another area of focus. And lastly, exports and foreign direct investment. As we all know, we live, work, and breathe in a global economy, and so we're always looking to new markets for opportunities. Next slide, Chris. Okay, EDA's program portfolio. We are have a broad list of economic development tools that we bring to bear in our practice. The most flexible of all the programs is the Economic Adjustment Assistance Program, and that is the program tool that we're using to deliver the American Rescue Plan funds. These are economic adjustment funds, and the coal commitment is certainly also economic adjustment programming, inclusive. It resides in both the Build Back Better program and also in the economic adjustment programming that's being delivered through the regions. So there's two of the 6 NOFAs, as I mentioned earlier, are focused on the coal commitment. That's not to say that coal communities are not eligible, and that ACC assisting coal community type projects are not eligible in the other NOFOs. They certainly are. And Chris Casper and the EDI team is certainly ready, willing, and able to help you focus, help our stakeholders focus their potential projects, concepts, and ideas into the right ARPA program tool. The other programs that we, of course, administer as part of our regular economic development assistance programming, public works and economic adjustment assistance programming include public works, what I affectionately call bricks and sticks. That's typically where our normal construction programming resides. We can also do design and engineering of construction type projects, but that's the traditional type of infrastructure, roads, water and sewer, utility work, broadband work. Generally, those projects are funded under public works. We also have planning funding, which we delivered on a regular basis and continuous basis to our economic development district partners. We have a strong network of 380 strong throughout the nation. Many of our leaders reside in Pennsylvania and are participating in today's session. So big shout out to our EDDs. We have technical assistance programming that we deliver. That's a two-prong effort. It's inclusive of our annual University Center programming, which PRO, Philadelphia Regional Office, just competed this year and will be announcing shortly. We also have regular technical assistance programming, feasibility studies, and the like to study a particular economic adjustment problem that may require some local TA in a particular region. There's the research and evaluation programming that's primarily administered in the headquarters office. We also have a trade adjustment assistance for firms, affectionately known as TAF. That's administered in headquarters. We have a network of TAF stakeholders throughout the region. There's the innovation and entrepreneurship programs that are also headquarters administered, but in collaboration with the regional offices. Many of you may be familiar with our various build to scale efforts. The recent Sprint Challenge, those are periodic competitions run in collaboration with the headquarters offices. And lastly, we have the Revolving Loan Fund programming. That's a part of our economic adjustment portfolio. Philadelphia has a network of approximately 150 strong economic development RLF recipients. They received, each of those recipients were offered CARES non-competitive programming, and most, if not all, stepped to the plate and are currently administering CARES programming, which is putting small business funding, low interest loans on the street to assist small businesses to recover from the pandemic. So thank you to any of those stakeholders on the line who may be administering RLFs. And we've heard great things about some of the funding that's been able to be, the loans have been able to be delivered. Next slide, please, Chris. Okay, this is the last one I'm going to cover, and then I'll turn it over to Chris. As I mentioned earlier, there are 6 NOFOs, statewide planning, research, and networks. There's $90 million available there. The Philadelphia Regional Office, as I said, is offering $1 million non-competitive awards to each of our 16 states and territories. So Governor Wolf's office did receive a $1 million offer in late July. The Build Back Better Regional Challenge is $1 billion that will be available. It's a two-phase effort. There will be transforming 20 to 30 economically distressed regions through substantial investment. There will be groups of 3 to 8 projects totaling 25 to 75 million per region. We're open to proposals up to $100 million. And again, as I said, it's a two-part process. The first phase is planning the It's not traditional planning as some of the districts may be thinking. Instead, it's a planning effort focused on the Build Back Better concept itself, the 3 to 8 project proposal. That's what we're looking for when we're talking about the phase 1 planning effort. Travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation. That's $750 million to accelerate communities impacted by COVID-related travel and tourism decline through state grants, $510 million total, and competitive grants, $240 million total. That's throughout the nation. As I said, Governor Wolf received a non-competitive invitation already on the heels of the travel, tourism, outdoor recreation NOFO, and we look forward to collaborating with our various potential competitive tourism partners. There's the Economic Adjustment Assistance NOFO, which will deliver $500 million throughout the nation. Those investments will fund infrastructure, technical assistance, planning, and revolving loan programs through competitive grants available to every community. $200 million is devoted there to is committed to the coal community effort, and the Philadelphia office will be administering our allocation of that $200 million. Indigenous communities, there's $100 million allocated throughout the nation for additional economic adjustment assistance to specifically support Indigenous communities. And lastly, the Good Job Challenge, which is $500 million in total to establish or strengthen regional systems, training workers with in-demand skills through employer-driven training, supporting participants with wraparound services and employer commitments to hire. So all told, there's $300 million, 10% of the Build Back Better funding allocation is devoted to our coal communities, will be devoted to coal communities and to coal challenges. We look forward to working together to make a difference. As I said early, meeting communities where they are, and working together with our ARC partners and other federal partners to deliver on this challenge. To whom much is given, much is expected, and we look forward to working with everyone to meet that challenge. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you very much, Linda. I hope everybody can hear me, and I'd like to apologize, first of all, for the initial technical difficulties. I know that Linda started off on this slide, and one of the problems with following someone that is as knowledgeable on a subject as Linda is, I'm going to repeat some things that have already been talked about. When she talked about the $3 million that was allocated for the American Rescue Plan to EDA and these three sort of groups, one point I want to reiterate is that these are all interrelated. One builds upon the other, ultimately building to the last point where we are resilient and we are ready for the future moving forward. Each of these may be an individual NOFO or a funding opportunity, but they work collectively. So as we're looking into our region and looking specifically into Pennsylvania, we need to start thinking about that as project developers, as we're working with our constituents, as you're working on your projects, that just because you want your project falls into one group area, you have to look at how it may also work into another one and start looking at these things collectively. And I'll talk about that a little bit more detail as we get into the Build Back Better challenge and how some of these things are all integrated. But she covered this slide pretty well, so I will move on to the next one. Obviously, today we're talking about energy and the focus on coal communities, EDAs, communities, coal community commitment will ensure support for coal communities as they recover from the pandemic, create new jobs, and create or expand new industries. Now, as we all know, this has been going on for a lot longer than the pandemic. The change in the energy structure in the country and in these communities has been going on excuse me, for over 15 years. So we have been a part of trying to create and set the conditions so that these industries can transform and change in a manner that the communities want them to. These are community-led efforts, and we need to adapt to what they want to do and where they want to go and where they want to build. So we want to build projects that work within those communities. EDA will encourage the communities to apply for all programs. Just because we're here talking about 2 specific programs that have money set aside for coal communities, I want to reiterate that they can apply for any of the programs that they qualify for. So do not limit yourself, or do not limit when talking to your constituents and the people you're working with, to only the economic adjustment assistance or only the Build Back Better. If the community has a program that fits into one of our other lines of funding, they are more than welcome to apply for it, and they should apply for it. Providing training, technical assistance grants is a big part of what we do. Some people aren't sure where they want to go or how to get to where they want to go, so they need to take the time out to do the planning in advance. We would rather, the old adage, measure twice, cut once. Let them do the planning in advance. We'll help fund that planning so that they can get to the goal and their ultimate objective. We want to offer opportunities to develop national communities of practice to support these coal communities. We're going to talk a lot about that in the Build Back Better, and how these things are all interrelated into regions, into clusters. And I want to talk specifically about how those clusters are designed in a little bit more. But mostly we're going to focus on 2 specific Notice of Opportunity funding. EDA, as Linda had talked about, has $3 million set aside for coal communities to support communities as they recover, again, from the pandemic, and create new jobs and opportunities. The 2 specific programs we're going to talk about is EDA dedicated $100 million of its Build Back Better regional challenge funds and $2 million of its Economic Adjustment Assistance Fund directly to support coal communities. So of that $3 billion, a large chunk of that has been allocated specifically to these regions. I know that some of you may have seen this before when we were talking during the webinar, but here's some of the examples of areas throughout the country where EDA is already doing assistance to coal communities. Johnstown, Pennsylvania, redeveloped a business center that had been shut down, and they put in a phone system and an operating system so they could take care of and help opioid addiction and help people get reintegrated into the workforce and retraining. That was what was good for their particular community. Each community is going to have their own needs, and we need to address projects and work with them on projects that fit each individual community's needs going forward. Another example of a project we did more located to Southwest Pennsylvania, and I'm sure that some of the people from Catalyst Connections are in the office, are in the attendance of the webinar, is part of their M2M, or maker to manufacturing programs, where they are getting a bunch of different manufacturers and makers together to work collaboratively throughout the region to start commercializing their products better. And they integrate and expand the entrepreneurial services and resources to those particular manufacturers in the area. And that's kind of the example of things we want to foster, collaboration, people working together, partnerships between industry, partnerships between communities, municipalities, big government, small government. A lot of us are part of the federal government, but we need to partner all the way down to the local levels to make sure that the people that need a specific project get what they need. All right, the Build Back Better Regional Challenge Program. When it first came out, I looked at the dollar amounts and I was like, okay, this is, it looks good. And then I read the NOFA, I got into the NOFA, and I got really, really, really excited about this project. Excuse me. This is a 2-phase project that we're doing. EDA is looking at 50 to 60 regional coalition partners that are going to be awarded a planning grant, basically, or a technical assistance grant to help develop a cluster project, meaning not just one manufacturer, not just one industry, but 7 or 8 different projects coming together to create a regional effect. So instead of looking at just a group of manufacturers coming together to build a product better, now we're looking at putting together manufacturers with logistic outfits, with possible broadband companies, with local builders, whatever your mind can think of. The idea is we want to encourage our constituents as we see them and we see links possible between them to say, hey, maybe you should talk to company A or manufacturer B and think about the Build Back Better regional challenge and come together with ideas and maybe possible put in a submission for this. Because this gives them the opportunity to kind of test these ideas, see if they're going to work, see if there's actual feasibility of these industries coming together to benefit a particular region. We don't define the region, they define the region. This is something that can be Southwest Pennsylvania. It can cross over into West Virginia. It can cross over into Ohio. That's something that our office will work with the partners on and how to coordinate those pieces. Obviously, we're not talking huge state operations, but regions obviously cross borders. They don't always know that this is the line of West Virginia and Pennsylvania. Sorry, we don't talk to each other. They do talk to each other. They do work together. They do business together. So there is no reason why they can't work together on this particular type of challenge. As I know that in Southwest Pennsylvania, there's a lot of the manufacturing companies that work with areas in West Virginia or work with other parts of Pennsylvania. So they can define the region that best defines them and the companies that best work together to create whatever it is that their vision is. EDA has an expectation to fund 100% of the first part of this. So we're expecting grants of up to $500,000 in technical assistance for these, awarding about 50 to 60 of these regional coalition partnerships. Phase 2 of that is they're going to select 20 to 30 of those and say, all right, let's give you bigger grants and let's actually fund these 5 or 6 or 7 programs or projects with grants between $25 and $75 million, with grants possibly up to as much as $100 million to actually implement these ideas. So we're going to take the best of the best and then actually fund these projects so that we can see how they work in these regions and actually get these regions transformed in their own vision based on their ideas that they've tested out before. So I am truly, truly, truly excited about the Build Back Better Regional Challenge Program, and I'm sorry about the tongue twister. So I encourage people in the audience to, as they're talking to people or whether they have their own project, start connecting with folks and seeing where areas where they can kind of cross-pollinate and work together to come forward with these ideas, and hopefully this will grow. I think this has the potential of setting up these regions far into the future, not 2 years, not 3 years, but 10, 15, 20 years down the line, setting them up with really, really good programs. So I'm truly, truly excited. This program, EDA expects to fund 80% of the phase 2 of it, with a 20% match coming from each of the partners participating in the grant. I kind of went through this before, the 2-phase system. The one thing that you really, really want to note on this particular slide is the proposal deadline dates. October 19th is the deadline date for phase 1. So that does mean we need to get out there, make sure the word is out there, that the industries know, hey, this is out there. This is the time to start putting together who you want to work with, which projects kind of go together, what is the goal of the group of projects, and get that proposal together, and then to call myself or whomever region they're in, so we can start working with them, building an application that hopefully can be successful. Phase 2 of this, once the initial technical assistance part has been completed, we're looking for application deadlines of March 15th of 2022. So this is happening very, very fast. So we want to get the word out, make sure you're talking to people about this, spreading the word, taking the time out. If I'll have a list of the websites for where the NOFOs are, but we want to make sure that they're out there, that people are reading them, they're understanding them, and that they're calling us with any questions they may have so that we can help them and guide them, because this is an incredibly exciting opportunity that EDA has started. Again, I'm going to just hit on one last piece of this. We talk about different clusters, the manufacturing cluster, the ag tech cluster, the university cluster. Those are traditional clusters, but that doesn't mean that manufacturing and ag tech and university can't come together and form its own cluster of a project working together where, again, where logistics is working with manufacturing, where it's working with innovation centers at universities to come up with a specific project idea. So don't limit themselves or limit your thinking to a specific cluster in that respect. The NOFA allows for it has a wide range. So we have some latitude, you have latitude. Let's come up with some really creative and exciting things. And again, there's $100 million that is dedicated to these cluster projects. Generally, we're looking at projects from 3 to 8 clustered together going forward. The Economic Adjustment Assistance Program, as Linda had said, is definitely our most flexible program. It is intended to fund non-construction and construction opportunities. It has a wide range of technical planning, workforce development, entrepreneurship, public works, infrastructure projects are all eligible for funding under this program. EDA encourages application submissions based on long-term, regional-oriented, coordinated, and collaborative economic development or redevelopment strategies. That, as always with us, fosters economic growth and resilience. And resilience, we can't say that enough, especially coming out of the pandemic, is we're looking for projects that are going to persist over time, that are going to be able to withstand changing economic structures, changing political structures, changing medical structures. The idea is to make sure that they have enough flexibility and design that they can withstand these things. These are the things that we are looking for and we want to support. But again, they have to be aligned to the specific community. So it's what the community wants to do and how they want to implement it. A lot of flexibility with this particular program. Again, we've been working with many of you on the EAA programs over years, but I do want to highlight that we have made some changes specific to this NOFA. So 1A, read the NOFA, make sure you're familiar with the basics of it, and then ask questions. I am always available. You can always get me through email or through a phone call if you have any specific questions about this. My information will be up at the end of this presentation for you guys to contact me. I know we're supposed to do a Q&A section as part of this, so I'm going to go through some of this as fast as I can. This is one of the things that also I really want to highlight. We define coal communities, regions that can reasonably demonstrate changes in the coal economy have resulted or anticipate to result in job loss and layoffs in any coal-reliant commercial sector. It includes, but I'm going to underline this, score this, and say this over and over again. It is not limited to coal mining, coal-fired plants, related transportation, logistics, supply chain, manufacturing industries. This is not an all-inclusive list. If you can reasonably demonstrate through statistics, through WARN notices, through just any method that your community is a coal community, you were dependent upon the coal industry for your businesses and the thriving community, then you qualify. Work with us, talk to us, and we will work with you. There is no predefined list of impacted coal communities. So if you can make the demonstration and reasonably demonstrate it, you'll be good to go. Again, who should apply? All our eligible applicants are eligible to apply. That's district organizations, Indian tribes, consortium of Indian tribes, municipalities, institutions of higher education, or nonprofit institutions. I do need to note where we sometimes have some issues is individuals and for-profit entities are not eligible to apply for this particular grant. There are a few other EDA opportunities that make some exceptions, but they're few and far between. Mostly, this is the list of who's eligible for EDA grants. For you guys, specifically in this audience, Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission, I believe Jennifer Lasser is one of the participants in the audience today. I think Vince may be also from Southwest, Northwest Pennsylvania Regional Commission, who's kind of the partner EDD for that particular region. Jill Foy's, they're great partners. Feel free to contact them, talk to them about projects, talk to them about what's happening in their areas and ways to connect and ways to integrate. I know we've said this 1,000 times, but partnerships, find partnerships, work together. Let's get a community-based plan that works for you. Here's a list of some of our other economic development districts throughout the state. And Pennsylvania State University is our university center partner. How to apply. Obviously, we've talked about this before, the NOFA. These slides, I believe, will be sent out so you can find all the funding opportunities on the EDA website, eda.gov/funding opportunities. Go to the EDA site, eda.gov, and there's links in there. It's probably the easiest way to remember it. If you don't, my contact email is at the bottom of this slide. Feel free to send me out an email. Just introduce yourself. Hi, I am John. I'm with X, Y, and Z, and I want to talk about opportunity A. And I will be more than glad to get back to you. I will set up a time to either talk to you via email or phone call, if at all possible. But either way, I will talk to you. And I see Brian jumping up. I know I'm running out of time rapidly, and I'm so sorry. I believe at this point in time, anyway, this is a chance for some Q&A and some questions. I am sorry if I kind of went over. I'm also available this afternoon for the one-on-ones. And thank you guys very much for inviting us to speak. I really do look forward to working with each and every one of you.
Linda and Chris, that was great. Thank you for that overview. And I'll just throw a quick question at you to get warmed up, and then we'll have some questions from the audience. So one is, if I'm from a coal community and I've never worked with EDA, don't know where to start, can you describe, we need to reach out to the EDRs. I think I got that. What is the role of these EDDs? You mentioned those. How do they come into the picture?
Well, the EDDs are awesome, first of all. They know the local area. They're the local experts. So if you're working in a particular community, reaching out to the EDD may actually be your very best first step, because they know what projects are already going on in that area. They know of more funding opportunities than just our funding opportunities, ways to get matching funds, other ways to fund projects. It is always key. So their role is to be the local or regional expert on what's happening for economic development purposes in that area. So they're a very, very good first step.
Yeah, and they also maintain the continuous economic development, the comprehensive economic development strategy, which is a living, breathing document that EDA fosters and funds through the economic development districts. That is basically the regional roadmap. So if you're bringing a particular problem into the community or into discussion for regional partners' attention, sometimes that's where new problems are brought to the table. So it's a really our EDDs are critical partners. They also help us to interface with our other federal partners, and certainly with ARC vis-a-vis power. So we rely heavily upon them.
That sounds like a great resource. All right, let's see what other questions we have from the audience.
So Briggs, this is Matt Harbaugh. So I've been collecting some questions from the audience. We've got about 5 or 6 of them so far. So the first one is all about combining federal programs, both within EDA and then between EDA and other federal agencies. Within the EDA programs, we have a question about the dollars for the tourism-specific program, tourism and outdoor recreation. Are those separate from the coal community dollars? Or is that included in the $300 million targeted at coal communities?
Those are separate dollars.
Right.
They're completely separate tranches of money. But that does bring up a point I forgot to mention, and I was asked to mention before, is that when talking about federal dollars and federal opportunities, when you're designing your projects, you want to make them as specific as possible to the organization that you're applying to. If you apply to EDA, it should be an economic development driven project, but you can also often cut these projects up so that they may have a component that is better with USDA or better with Department of Energy or Department of Education. So if you cut your projects up specifically, then you can actually get different sources of federal funding. But if you come to EDA for a project that's $100 million and you ask us for a $2 million grant and it's all inclusive, it kind of prohibits you from going to other federal agencies for money. So if the projects are able to be sliced up and cut into tranches that are specific to the program, that is a much better approach than just sending out one large overall project to any one particular federal agency.
No,
Great,
the only
thank you.
the only thing I would add to that is that basically there's a match requirement, and you cannot always achieve the match by adding other federal funding into it. We do collaborate, obviously, with our ARC partners, and we can go up to 80% together with ARC, generally 100% if folks are willing to make certain representations regarding taxing and borrowing authority or for tribes. But yeah, the match requirement is certainly there. And Chris mentioned that sometimes we structure projects separately to make those opportunities available across the various universe of potential federal partners. So that's why consultation is key.
Excellent. So the match issue is the topic of the next question. So we have a question about the timing of match commitment. With the upcoming October 19th deadline for the Build Back Better Challenge, do they need to have all of their match identified at that point? Do all of the partners need to be locked down at that point, or is that something that happens between that deadline and the March 15th deadline?
Well, the first part of the Build Back Better challenge is we expect to actually fund 100% of that, or up to 100% of that. So the match requirement may not be as much of an issue. Generally speaking, however, and I will let Linda go into more detail about this, you are required to have the match in hand at the time of application. So for part two, when you come down the line, you're going to need to have that 20% already identified and where that's coming from. And obviously, before you put in the application, whoever the partners are, they're going to be part of the application. So yes, they are going to need to be identified before the application is submitted, is my guess. Linda?
Yeah, this is the proverbial chicken and egg problem when you talk about funding, because of course there's a cost associated with devoting, setting aside dollars if and when they might not be needed. So the general EDA test is the applicant has to document that the matching share will be committed to the project for the period of performance, available as needed, and not be conditioned or encumbered in any way that may preclude its use, consistent with the requirements of EDA investment assistance. So to meet these requirements, we ask for the source of the matching share, a commitment letter, a board resolution, or equivalent document signed by the authorized representative of the organization providing the matching funds. We may ask for additional information to substantiate the availability of matching funds, but which I try as grant administrator to work with, to foster an environment in which we'll work with and communicate with our communities to see how we can address their particular needs as it relates to the match that they're proposing. It's a challenge. As I said, to whom much is given, much is expected. So along with this very large appropriation, our OIG partners at the Department of Commerce are literally almost standing beside us in real time, watching to see that we're administering the program as we have said and as is required across federal grantor agencies. So there's a little bit of we try and strike a balance with enforcement and also, as I said, and have referred to, always meeting communities where they are. So let's talk, let's see what you've got, and let's see what we can work with and how we can get those findings achieved in a way that that meets our legal tests and protects all of us from not only the OIG auditors, but also from the A123 auditors, which are basically, part of our ongoing single audit process. Getting in the weeds there a little bit, but
so just a follow-up on the match issue. I think you mentioned earlier that ARC funding can serve as match, at least for the power program. Does ARC funding also qualify as match for the Build Back Better or from some of these other newer programs?
It's not so much a match, it's more of a collaboration. So if you're working with another federal partner, you need to tell us immediately, particularly our ARC. We'll structure the project jointly if we know ahead of time. The issue for us is if we learn of federal partners after the fact, and certainly the potential duplication of effort. We don't want to be funding a project. These are scarce competitive dollars. We want to know if you've applied for another federal funding opportunity, please let us know so that we can reach out to that agency and find out what their scope of work is. As Chris mentioned, it might be independent and separate. There may be a way for us to separate the projects, which sometimes works. We have a case somewhere in our region now where we didn't know about that. Basically, it's another agency is funding a very similar scope of work, and so now we're trying to separate them. It's a lot of wasted effort, opportunity cost, resources expended. So let us know what your plans are. What are other agencies you're talking to? We may need to enter into a memorandum of understanding with that agency. What we don't want to see is a situation where they make an award and we make an award for the same project. We either want to separate them and make them distinct, or we want to make a joint award vis-a-vis a memorandum of understanding, and then you're only serving one federal partner. In that case, for example, when we collaborate with ARC, one funder is the lead agency, makes a direct grant. The other funding agency supplements, and you are only administering one financial assistance award instead of two.
Great. So just to reiterate what I think you've been saying, which is it's very important for applicants to meet with federal agency personnel when they're in the process of putting together their plans. And I think that's true for all of the other agencies that we'll hear from today as well. One note to the agency personnel who have been dropping contact info into the chat box. I think in some cases you've labeled that just for all panelists to see. If you want that contact info to be available to everyone on the call, you may want to copy and paste it back in and instead address it to everyone so that all of the attendees can see that. So we have another question here about crossing borders. So you mentioned that it's viewed favorably to have these regional applications that can even cross state borders. Can you talk a little bit about how is that affected by the way that the EDA divides up the country into regions? In Western Pennsylvania, there may be collaborations that involve organizations in Ohio, and we know that Ohio falls into a different EDA region. Does that impact at all the way they should be applying?
I'll take that question. I think yes, it would, it could. We're as Chris mentioned, we are open to it, and we have collaborated across regional boundaries in the past. What that would involve is Chris mentioning it to me and his supervisor, and I'll talk with the other regional director, and we'll decide where the equities lie and where the application will be housed. It really is just totally fact specific, but we have collaborated across. I'm pretty sure across Kentucky, definitely over to Ohio on coal projects. So that's something we're very open to. We recognize the fact that there are not state boundaries to regional ecosystems. And I think we'll be doing more of this in the future. So let's talk.
Great. And so then we have a question about, this one is specific to the South Central region of Pennsylvania. John Sider mentioned that region does not yet have a CEDS, Community Economic Development Plan, I guess. So he said that they're working on it, but he wants to know if that will be a problem for their application.
It's not that it'll be a problem for their application. Like with every application, it will be given fair consideration. The question becomes, who are the collaborators? What is the area involved? And are there competing interests within those particular regions? Let's say Dauphin County and Chester County want to team up, but they have one central organization wanting to do it, but then there's other organizations within those counties also applying. So we don't want to duplicate efforts. We want to, at that point, I want to try to get the people all interested in the same outcome together at a table, so that they can hopefully come together with one project, working together with one outcome. So that's where the problem comes, is just the pre-coordination to the application. Who's actually going to be the applicant? What is the overall objective? And making sure there's no competing interests for federal dollars.
Great, thank you. We have a question about the jobs being created. So the question is, how is the EDA ensuring that the jobs created by these funds are good jobs that can earn someone a family-sustaining living?
Well, we do. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris. You go ahead. No, I was just going to say, thoughtful question.
Yeah, it's an awesome question, and part of it is it comes in the application of what type of jobs are being that are being addressed in the application. If someone comes to us and says, and I'm not disparaging McDonald's by any means, but they say we're going to fund a string of fast food restaurants in a mall. All right, is that how is that really going to give an economic boon to a community? That doesn't mean that it's not important to have those out there. So it's a case by case basis. You know, what type of jobs they say they believe they can create, what type of information is out there that says that industry will be supported in the area, what kind of workers have been laid off that are there and available within a community that need to get picked up. I mean, there's two parts to that. One, you have businesses you want to bring into a community, but you also want to build up that community by hiring the workforce in that community. So what workers are in that community that are available to take over those jobs? So if the project fits creating the jobs there for the people that are there, then it's something we want to support. But it is a case by case basis. There is no set. It has to be, you know, $15 an hour or whatever like that. It doesn't work that way. It's a whole collaborative approach.
Yeah, I would say it's even that we look at it even broader than necessarily jobs or wages. Particularly as to economic adjustment, we're looking for impacts that are responsive to the problem that's being brought to our attention, and in some cases they can be not necessarily, numerical. So again, this is another area where we'll work with you and talk through your idea and see how we can help to justify it. In many cases, we'll probably send you back to the NOFO and say, look at this section and think about that, and then document it for us.
And we also do fund anchor projects that may not create any jobs, but set the condition for other jobs to come to the area. So, if we're laying some type of infrastructure, it may not itself create jobs, but it may allow an industrial park to open at the far end that may, create jobs down the line. So it isn't, as Linda said, it's a whole broad look at the problem.
And I think the job question, am I muted? No. I think the job question tends to come to be at issue when you're offering beneficiary industries as the primary economic justification for the project. Then we might be asking, are they creating new jobs? Are they only saving jobs? Those types of inquiries. But if it's something that's more responsive to a resiliency undertaking that carves a path for the future, then we may just be looking at future impacts on a broader scale, not necessarily numerical.
So we have a related question here that I think gets a little more specific. This is from Tom Croft from the SVA Heartland Capital Network. He asks about the role of organized labor, and will EDA require grant recipients to respect the rights of workers? And does it hold President Biden's view of public-private labor partnerships as a path towards just transition for workers in the region?
Well, I guess EDA applies the Davis-Bacon regulations are part of our cross-cutting requirements. So as to construction, our subject matter experts who administer construction projects certainly look at labor issues and make sure that the departmental regulations are adhered to. I don't necessarily know that issue is relevant as to some of the other what we call soft capacity building type programs, where, for example, we're funding a feasibility study or some other soft undertaking. The primary purpose would be to, in that case, typically we're procuring those skill sets, that expertise, or offering federal funding to support the in-kind work of the applicant organization. So I think that's where we would achieve that, and I hope that helps. But we can certainly take that under advisement, and I know some of the folks in the EDI shop, Doug Lynott, shout out to you, Doug, are on the line, so we can certainly bat that around internally and tee something up on the website about it. Thanks for the thoughtful question. I do appreciate it.
And I think we may be running short on time for this Q&A panel, so I'll just add one more that someone asked, which is, are the NOFOs open now? And if so, where can they access them?
I'm going to put the thing back up one more time. Give me 1 second. Can you see that? Is my screen being shared?
It is. I think we're making it bigger right now. There we go. Great. Well, hopefully the attendees are taking down this information, and it's probably worth restating that this presentation is being recorded and will be available on the website for the IWG. I've been looking at some comments to the panelists in the chat box. It looks like we're also going to make sure that all of the contact information for the federal and also some of the state representatives will be made available to everyone, so that people have individuals that they can reach out to and talk about with their questions.
Also, Doug Lynott just also put it in the chat box, that website's for people to look at.
Terrific. So Briggs, back to you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Matt. And thank you, Linda and Chris. You've survived on the hot seat, so congratulations. And I really want to thank our audience for being engaged here. Half a dozen really good questions. Appreciate that. And EDA folks are going to stay around both in the afternoon if you want to sign up for a 15-minute one-on-one, or if you want to just submit additional questions through the chat. But we do need to take a break. Just want to give you a couple of minutes and then come right back because we're going to be starting off with our federal panel with Appalachian Regional Commission. And you're going to get an overview of a half a dozen agencies in quick fashion and answer any questions that you have. So please take just a quick break. It's 10:29 by my clock, so why don't we take till, let's say, 10:32. So take a 3-minute break and then hurry right back and we'll get started. Thank you. All right, welcome back. Why don't we go ahead and put the slides up on the screen for ARC, and I'll turn it over to Jen for a quick overview of ARC programs.
Okay, can everybody see that? Briggs, just a quick yes if you see it.
Yes, I can see and hear.
Fantastic. Pre-meeting, I had a little bit of a technical difficulty, so this is good to know. So I hope in this 2 minutes break that you had that you're re-energized. So I hope you saw what I did there. It's a tough audience. So I'm Jen Simon. I'm not a comedian, but a program manager at the Appalachian Regional Commission, and I've worked at the state level as Neil Fowler, as you heard his name mentioned earlier, as an ARC program manager in Ohio. I've been an ARC grantee, and now I work at the federal level. So I do mostly non-construction projects, but you'll hear from my colleague Chris Brazell this afternoon if you have a session with us, who can speak a little bit more in depth about construction projects. I just want to say wow to EDA and the opportunities that this means for our communities, our regions. And it really is an opportunity, and I put this in the chat, to swing for the fences and forming these partnerships and making something big happen. Just don't be afraid of the opportunities. I was happy to hear EDA say over and over again, you know, we have the technical assistance. So, and I'll go into a little bit more about how we work with local development districts, which are also known as economic development districts in Pennsylvania and actually throughout most of our region. So the Appalachian region, just as a quick reminder, 13 states, 420 counties, almost 26 million people. We have 73 local development districts. And if you want to know more about our history and where we've been and the region overall, I encourage you to go to arc.gov. I'll say that over and over again for all things ARC. So each year, I wanted to put this slide up just so you get a sense of the size of the Appalachian region in Pennsylvania. I know we're working on Western PA right now, but each year we designate county economic status. And for fiscal year 2022, it's based on 3 indicators always. But this is what we currently see in Pennsylvania. It's 3-year average unemployment rates, per capita market income, and poverty rates. And Pennsylvania, the good news is mostly transitional. In other words, things are looking up, but we still have a lot of work to do to make sure that everyone reaches that parity, which is part of ARC's vision and mission, is to, it really is what drives us, but is to really make sure that our region is on parity with the nation from an economic standpoint. But beyond that, we have an opportunity now through various programs to be able to make sure that our region thrives and that more counties become competitive, which is the top 10% of the counties in the United States. We want to see more folks in that category. So a little bit on ARC's roles. We serve as a grant maker and funder, and I know a lot of people want to hear about that. That's our big role. But we also provide a lot of research and data about the programs and the focus areas that we hear from our grantees that they want to see, or applicants, or our state partners where they want more information. I recommend that you really go to arc.gov/research and pay attention to our coal impact report. Earlier when EDA had mentioned what they consider coal impact, the report goes into a little bit more detail on how ARC also looks at impact. So I'll talk about that in just a second, but just want to make sure that you take a look at that research. We're also a convener. We've convened activities with EDA, with Treasury, with other federal agencies to make sure that our region knows about the federal programs that are here today and knows how to be able to get that. And so we've been lucky that the agencies have come forward and really dove into the programs that they have and worked with our community leaders and practitioners. We also have a number of investment tools for individuals, academies, and institutes, and I'll talk briefly about that. All of our investments and our work around our strategic plan. Some organizations create strategic plans and they may end up on a shelf, but ARCs actually guides what EDA has the same philosophy. It guides the investments that we make, and we go through a process. It's locally driven, state driven, with federal input, and we arrive at a set of goals every 5 years. We're currently revising this, but currently this is where we are. So we focus on economic opportunities. So this is the goal area that I primarily work in as a program manager. Access to capital is my area of expertise, technical assistance to businesses, whether they are existing or startups, entrepreneurship, education, et cetera. In Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania takes entrepreneurship quite, seriously, and I always appreciate that from Pennsylvania. We've done beyond entrepreneurship, we've also done work with the manufacturing programs. I know Catalyst Connection is on here and was mentioned earlier, and others. So we look forward to being able to continue that. Ready workforce. So we work in education and increasing skill sets and things like advanced welding and manufacturing, et cetera, and helping residents find jobs that are going to make a difference in their lives with an advanced skill set, or with a skill set that's going to just move them to the next level. We also invest in critical infrastructure, and I will say, as a former program manager from 20 plus years ago at the state level, ARC has really moved toward a broader economic development approach. However, we know that there are still pockets of the region where critical infrastructure is still critical, right? So water, wastewater, highways, broadband, we all hear that over and over again. So it's definitely an area where we focus our efforts. We also focus on natural and cultural assets. A lot of people talk about tourism. A lot of people talk about oil, gas. I mean, the things that we have from a timber perspective. Some of the states that are active in that area, West Virginia is a big one. We also work with leadership and community capacity. So as states send us, and I'm going to go into that, as they send us their priorities, they fit into these areas, and every single state chooses to focus on an annual basis or every 4 years, depending on the governor, on different goal areas that really meet what they want to accomplish. So we encourage right now everybody with ARC's funding sources, but to really leverage these new EDA funds and the funds that are coming from EPA and others in order to be able to take, and Linda said this several times, but be able to take phases of your projects, whatever it might be, in order to really make a complete picture happen. So we have a program, many of you may already have been grantees or involved with it. It's called an Area Development Program. Pennsylvania, Neil again is in charge of that program with some staff members who are fantastic to work with. And it really is set up to be very flexible, again, in those priority areas. Pennsylvania gets approximately $6 million a year from this program. It's our mainstay. It's been there since I was in the program years ago. And it's really a bottom-up approach. So it's been mentioned several times, but I want to underline this and put exclamation points at the end. The local development districts or the economic development districts, same thing, are a critical component in application development and driving initiatives and being able to really help with the technical assistance that applicants or grantees need throughout the entire process. So we work with the LDDs, then the state, and then the state obviously sends their priorities up to us, their applications. So we're going to talk about that program, but I want to talk something that's a little more relevant to this overall discussion, and that's our POWER program. POWER was started in about 2015. I was a POWER grantee in 2016 and again in 2019. And it's a tough program. It's very, very competitive. Pennsylvania has done an amazing job. It's meant to be for the coal-impacted communities, as I mentioned. And but it's also meant to be very broad. We want to see regional approaches. We want to see innovative approaches to economic development and economic transition. So we encourage a lot of collaboration, and people are rewarded a lot based on that. And we require demand. Is there a demand for the project that people are putting together? So the initiative was federally funded, and we, just as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the coal impact is pretty broad, and you can figure out what that means for your community or communities. And, again, the collaboration is the key, and having an area that fits that definition is quite critical. The co-chair mentioned previously $238 million so far, 293 projects. And we've helped people start new business. We've helped existing businesses, trained new workers, developed broadband projects, worked with students on new opportunities. And I say we because it's from the bottom all the way to the top in terms of how these projects come forward. We've also seen investments in recovery ecosystems. I do want to underscore again, Pennsylvania has been quite competitive in this program, and that's not by accident. So we're in this time of year when deadlines have passed on some of our major initiatives, but now is the time for the communities and organizations to prepare for what is coming around the corner. Many of you may already know that additional funding may be on the horizon for ARC, and that's for Congress to work out. So we have 2 additional programs here. I'm not going to go into them, but they're mostly about substance use disorder and obviously workforce, and being able to match the programs that we already have. I have one more slide, Briggs, so I'll hurry through that. In addition, we do have investing in people programs, as I mentioned, STEM education, leadership, nonprofit resource center, and experiential learning across the board to hone skills and be able to help people build networks. So again, repeat here, state contacts, Neil Fowler. I am always on the phone with Neil. I'm always in email communication with him, so I appreciate him very, very much. Our power contact is Karen Fabiano, and you can reach her at power@arc.gov. I can help with non-construction questions, and this afternoon's guest will be Chris Brazel, who can answer more in-depth construction questions. So thank you for that. I think we'll have a Q&A time when I can hopefully get to anything that I may have missed.
That was great. Thank you, Jennifer. And while my colleague Kate Gordon from the Department of Energy has come online, I'll just say thanks for that brief overview of ARC. And you're absolutely right. We're going to have questions at the Q&A at 11:30. So folks, put your comments in the chat and we'll queue those up and let Jen respond back to that. Again, thanks so much, ARC, for that brief overview. So Kate, I'm seeing your slides.
Sure. Thanks.
There they are. Can you go into full screen mode?
Let me just get to that. Second.
You're a little bit quiet.
Okay, did that work, Briggs?
It is.
And am I still quiet? I have my microphone on, so I'm not sure why.
I'm hearing you a little bit quiet, but
all right. I'm not sure what else I can do. I'm right by my mic, so I'll be loud. Great to see everybody, and thank you, and what great presentations this morning. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about the Department of Energy, which is a major department in the federal government, and also really, I think, connected to a lot of what we've been talking about in terms of providing opportunities for investment into communities, anchoring economic growth, underpinning economic growth through energy access and reliability, and just a really important partner in all of these efforts. One of the important roles of the Department of Energy, and this is on our main website now in terms of where we see ourselves in providing economic development support across the federal government and across communities. And I'm just going to read it because I think it's a really important vision for this department. By scaling up the development and deployment of the clean energy technologies of the future, DOE will help put Americans in construction, skilled trades, and engineering to work, building a new clean energy infrastructure and economy while making sure every American worker and community can benefit from and see the future in clean energy solutions. I think that's really important vision in that we see ourselves as really a critical part of exactly what you've been hearing about, these transformation and toward greater economic sustainability, resilience, an inclusive economy in the future. Energy is obviously a big part of that, just because in order to build out that economy, we need access to energy and reliable energy. and also energy can be a driver of those solutions. The Department of Energy has a secondary role here, which is that we are actually the agency that was named by the president to administer the interagency work group on coal and power plant communities. We're so thrilled that DOE, through Secretary Granholm, has that role as a principal on the interagency work group. And of course, that Brian Anderson from the NETL is the executive director of the interagency work group. Together, DOE and NETL really are the kind of backbone of this interagency group. And I think we really see that role as foundational and as a connector across many of the agencies you're going to hear from. I should just say my role as senior advisor to the secretary is specifically to drive this initiative and to help align resources within DOE and across agencies toward these goals. The last thing I'm going to say about DOE before saying a little more about our specific programs is, just how excited we are about the Economic Development Administration's new funding for economic development, and especially for coal communities. And we see that grant opportunity that you just heard about as foundational to our work across all of the interagency work group agencies. As Chris said, the Build Back Better grants in particular are holistic and allow regions to tie together strategies for industry growth and job creation with workforce strategies with underlying infrastructure like broadband and energy transmission. We at DOE see our programs that I'm about to talk about briefly as a key part of those strategies because, again, energy underpins all this economic development, and also our programs and our investments can really be a driver for growth. So I'm going to talk very briefly about 3 big programs at DOE. These are not the only programs we have, but they're probably the most relevant. I should also say that today during the one-on-ones later on, we actually have folks from each of these offices that will be on hand to answer questions very specifically. I'm thrilled at that level of participation. So first of all, energy efficiency, renewable energy, or EERE, really focuses in a broad range of energy solutions across, bioenergy, hydrogen, geothermal, advanced manufacturing, water, energy efficiency. Many of these solutions are really going to underpin kind of the visions that you all have put forward or are developing in Western and Southwestern Pennsylvania. Historically, having industry and having an energy sector with energy skills really gives you a leg up, frankly, in building out some of these industries that, again, rely on industrial infrastructure and skills. The Fossil Energy and Carbon Management Office is also really important because it really focuses on, in some ways sort of transitioning to carbon management and looking at things like carbon capture, again, a focus on hydrogen, reducing emissions and methane emissions, particularly from existing fossil plants, looking at critical mineral production, so mining opportunities that will underpin the clean energy economy, CO2 removal, carbon removal. Again, many of these opportunities are very consistent with the skills and infrastructure that exist in existing mining and power plant communities. Fossil energy has 3 big priorities. One is just reducing the environmental impacts of existing fossil fuel production, advancing carbon management, as I just said, and then, of course, NETL is a huge part of the fossil energy program, providing analysis, technical capability, and investment across many of these industries, particularly in, of course, Morgantown and in Western Pennsylvania. And then the Loan Program Office is really our public-private partnership office. This is where we leverage DOE's federal dollars to bring in private sector dollars for loans and loan guarantees, where we really bring in the private sector, the true job creators in this economic development conversation, to build out projects, to access debt, to look at opportunities where there is existing infrastructure that can be repurposed, that can be built on, that can anchor new development. And I just wanted to underpin here that the Loan Program Office is particularly interested, and we're doing a lot of work at DOE on coal plant repurpose and all kinds of different things that you can do with these existing facilities. And again, many of the skill levels of existing workers. Also, of course, water technologies are critical for many of these systems and for manufacturing generally, and that's a big goal of LPO. And just a couple of those key opportunities, again, conversion to clean energy assets of those plants, looking at mining opportunities actually to critical materials, as I said before, and just looking at all kinds of ranges of technologies that could be potentially eligible for loans and loan guarantees. And again, anchor some of those economic strategies. You know, there's a lot more to say. I'm going to leave it at that because I want us to have a lot of time for questions. But I will say that I hope this underscores that there is no one is talking about a one-for-one replacement of a set of industries of the coal economy with a different economy. Everyone is talking about economic diversification, opportunities that are region specific, looking at building off existing assets, building off existing skills, looking at, as Tom Croft asked about earlier, really the opportunity to create high quality jobs with access and opportunity across this region. We want to be a partner with you on that and with EDA on that, and very excited to continue working with this community. And I will leave it at that. Back to you, Briggs.
Hey, thanks so much, Kate. Really appreciate that very brief overview, and we'll certainly circle back in the Q&A. Why don't we bring up our next speaker? We have the Department of Interior with us.
Good morning, all. My name is Sterling Rideout, and we also have Yolanda Norman Moore. I'll just open it up as great opportunity to see everyone here together, as far as partners, to share information and talk about how we can diversify economies for the communities impacted by coal. So I just want to say thank you all for coming out, and just to give you a little quick history of the program we're going to talk about, the AML Economic Revitalization Program. It started in 2016, and in 2016 it started out with just Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Kentucky, and then it expanded to Ohio, Virginia, Alabama. And I just wanted to say you will see from Yolanda did a presentation, a great opportunity that has been going on since 2016 and look like it will continue in the future. And I just want to thank everyone for giving us the opportunity to share this information, and I'll turn it over to Yolanda.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Can you hear me?
You're a little low, Yolanda.
I'm a little low. Okay, I'm trying here. Technical issues here. I'm sorry. I will speak up. How is that?
That sounds great.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Sterling. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to be talking about our Amla program, and I'm just going to cut to the chase. And I know we have a lot of listeners here who I won't get it too much into the weeds of it, but just to let you know that this program is very robust in terms of flexibility and types of projects in which this funding can be utilized for. And I'm hoping that, the takeaway message from this is that OSMRE, one of the many bureaus with the Department of Interior, is here to work with our state, local, community groups, our federal partners to help and assist coal communities diversify their economies. And again, you are the experts. We are just here as a conduit to put it all together. So, with that being said, our Amla program, as Sterling mentioned, has been around since 2016. We have put out, we've appropriated, we've had about $655 million appropriated through this in FY 2021. And for Pennsylvania, next slide, please. For the 2021 budget, there is actually 25 million available. And how our program works, while OSMRE does not specifically provide grants directly to applicants, the monies are actually funneled to the state AML program. And so in this instance, it would be Pennsylvania's Department of Environmental Protection. And at the end of the slide, you will see the contact information for contacting them for project proposals, again, that you would think would be a benefit that the AMLR funding could be utilized for. So again, in our 22 budget, it's anticipated, I don't like to how can I say, project, but in this instance, I'll just say, or the last look at the budgets, it's 165 million that's proposed to be going out the next budget cycle. Again, it hasn't been set in stone yet, but you can see that there's definitely the interest and the support. And that 165 is in addition to it's 50 million over what we have typically gotten in the past few years. So with that being said, I'm not quite sure how that will be sliced up, but in any event, minimum 25 million here that we're looking at going out to Pennsylvania. Next slide. And I'm going to point to you, as Sterling mentioned, that they're the eligible states and tribes, and that's self-explanatory on that map. And what we're really looking for is projects which have been unreclaimed, previously reclaimed, or you may just have a project which sits beside an AML problem. We don't eliminate any of those. We'll take a look at them, and our great resource document is our guidance document, which is available on our website, which kind of goes through some of the projects that we take a look at and we will approve for funding. Next slide, please. AMLA benefits. Well, definitely, we have to make certain that we're tracking performance measures. And again, coming back to that issue of it being local, state, it's the community. You define success for the projects, and for some projects, it's very specific. Jobs created, like pretty easy. Households served. We see a lot of infrastructure projects going in, increasing, enhancing, restoring number of visitors, recreational facilities, ATV trails. We see the whole gamut. And in our annual AMLA report, which is currently on our website, you can get a flavor for all the many projects that we have evaluated that are actually in progress, and see some of the performance measures which are being tracked. But again, it's specific to project. You define success for the project, and that's one thing I want to emphasize, is that what's best, what works in the community. So again, definitely reach out to their state, local, you're the expert in how you want to define success for your project in terms of benefits. Next slide. And you'll see here is the status. This is just a snapshot of our AMLA project since the inception in 2016. We have 180 active projects now. 120 have actually received our authorization to proceed, which basically says we've reviewed your technical documents. Some do require some environmental reviews, and 20 of these projects have been completed. And again, just seeing the flavor of it, the AMLA fund is robust. We leverage our monies we've actually worked with ARC, EDA, and the great thing about the AMLA funds is there is no match required. So I always like to brag about that. So yeah, but again, the projects here, we've seen industrial parks, food production, trail system, the big and the small, we've seen many. And again, broadband project, electricity generating, obviously water supply, training, visitor attraction, again, many, the length and breadth, and I am just floored by these economic projects that we have seen, our community projects. And it could be as small as, hey, we need to put a school dorm in because teachers, I think I worked on one project where teachers don't really have housing to come in to teach in these local communities. So the length and breadth is, again, we're fascinated and just very creative, the innovation that we've seen where these monies have gone to. Next slide. Drilling down a little bit to the status of our projects in Pennsylvania. As you can see, we have 52 projects which have received preliminary approval, and that's just for the funding piece. What we're basically saying is this funding meets the intent of AMLA. Again, there's not one-stop shop. We've seen the whole breadth again. So again, reach out to Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, They have a process in place in which they obtain project applications. And if you can think of opportunities again, you have the whole federal agency here, ABC soup nuts here, who can think about creative ways of putting the pieces of monies together. Sure, we are here. We're certainly available to answer questions. I've given you an example of the Anthracite Outdoor Adventure Area project. Again, it's looking at AMLA funds, but not all of it is AMLA funds. We're leveraging other funding sources to make it bigger. Some of the performance measures here that we will be tracking is the anticipated increase in passes that will be sold, the infrastructure piece which we'll be putting in place here. So again, get creative, get innovative. That's what this money is here for. Next slide. And again, this is another project here. A small portion of that was AMLA monies. They'll be looking to reclaim 60 acres of refuse material. This is the Donaldson project. And while we're doing that, this project is going to be looking at correcting some stream paths, some flooding events issue which have happened in the past, and also creating that recreation facility with some interpretive walking trails and benches and fishing access across. So again, our goal is to revitalize community. It's all good and well that we do environmental cleanup, but we also have to invigorate and revitalize coaling and mining community. This is what this money is here to do. Next slide. Tips. And again, of course, everybody probably wants to know. So how do I submit an application? And I put the contact information with the new director of Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection Bureau of Abandonment Mine Land Reclamation, Brian Bradley. Feel free to reach out to Brian. Again, the monies goes to the states, and the states working with the local and various economic development authorities and communities determine what project works best for the state, for the community, and that's how it should be. You have identified here 2 reference sources, our guidance document and our annual AMLA report if you want to get a flavor for the projects, or even if you're thinking about, well, let me see if my project actually qualifies. Take a look. And again, there is no matching money for AMLA funds, but we do encourage leveraging AMLA funds, working with other federal agent private entities. We certainly look forward to that because we think in that approach we can expand and broaden the scope of the project. And thank you for your time, and we'll be around to answer questions later. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Yolanda, and thanks, Sterling. That was great. Why don't we bring up our next speaker, Matt Dalby from EPA, to give us a brief overview. And again, thanks so much, Interior, for that.
All righty. Good morning, everybody. I'm hoping my slides are going to come up in a moment. Okay. I think they are. There we go. I've started in the middle. Briggs, can you hear me at this one?
I can hear you, and you're in full screen now.
Great. Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. So the main thing I want to do today is talk about how the Environmental Protection Agency can be helpful to you all in your communities where you're working on diversifying your economy and transitioning, some of your economies, and how we can be helpful in connecting you all with other federal agencies, making connections at the community level, and also how we can help you make connections with industry partners and private sector philanthropy and things like that. The other thing I want to bring up is why it is so important for the Environmental Protection Agency to be involved in this economic revitalization sort of efforts. If you think about it, many of the legacy environmental challenges that communities are dealing with, right, from land that's contaminated to infrastructure that hasn't been updated and things like that, have those challenges are due to economic decline. So economies no longer being as important to the national and global economy as they had been, for instance, right? So places where we used to build stuff, places where we would power things, places where we would clean things and such like that are places that are places that were part of an economy that has transitioned away. Right. And if you think about it from an environmental protection perspective, when we have vibrant and thriving and sustainable economies, that allows communities to protect the environment and protect human health better than they would have otherwise. And then maybe just the last way to put this is to be supportive of revitalizing communities is really a part of the core of our mission, right? We work with land, right? Primarily land that had already had development on it. And we work with people who are having to deal with some of the consequences of the environmental challenges that come along with that. So if you are working with people or if you're working with land as part of your economic revitalization efforts, then we can help you. We can play a role in the work that you're doing. And when I say we, I mean, we have programs out of our headquarters office, which is where I work. I run a little office called, oddly, the Office of Community Revitalization. We work on land issues. We work on economic development issues. We help communities figure out how their land use policies could be reformed so that they're best for accommodating growth in ways that are good for the environment. So we do that a little bit from our headquarters office, but most of our work at the community level goes on from our 10 regional offices. And for Pennsylvania, you all know the EPA regional office is out of Philadelphia. And I do want to just acknowledge a couple of my colleagues who are on. Betty Barnes from our Region 3 office is on. I saw Andrew Taylor on, and I think Samantha Beers is on as well. I would hope that folks at the end of the morning session will sign up to meet with Andrew and Betty to talk a little bit about how we can be supportive of your efforts at revitalization when it comes to land and people. In general, EPA offers a variety of different sort of ways that we can be supportive of economic revitalization. So from technical assistance, which is what my office does primarily, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. Again, we work with federal partners. We can help you try to figure out which are the projects that you need to get done first, noting that in some cases you're going to have to be assessing land and doing some cleanups before you apply for funding for building stuff or supporting new businesses on previously developed sites. We have really big and robust brownfield and Superfund programs. We also have programs that relate to underground storage tanks and things. We have programs that support energy efficiency, stormwater management, helping communities figure out ways to meet clean air requirements. And then we have many best practices and guides that can be helpful as you go through your economic revitalization journeys. As I mentioned, my program does a good amount of technical assistance where we try to help communities that are economically distressed, that have populations that are particularly vulnerable to environmental challenges. We do our technical assistance through an approach that is probably familiar to many of the planners on the call today. We help communities assess what their assets are, what their economic drivers might be. We help communities convene private sector actors, philanthropy, other federal agencies, state actors, and things like that. And just want to quickly just give a shout out to my former boss, who's actually the co-chair of the working group, Gina Mccarthy. During her time at EPA, she always used to talk about how EPA's convening power was one of the best things that we could do in helping to protect the environment. This has been carried on with our current administrator, Administrator Regan, as well as my boss, Vicky Arroyo, who's the head of the policy office at EPA. Convening, working at the community level, helping communities figure out what their assets are so that on their journey to revitalization, they are both meeting community needs and helping to protect the environment. The third sort of portion to the work that we do is we help communities implement, right? And that is when we do our technical assistance work on the ground and we bring federal folks in, we will bring in an EDA person or a USDA rural development person or a HUD person who can point your community to the programs that can best be brought in once there's been a vision put forward, once there's an understanding of what some of the environmental challenges would be, and once there's an understanding of like what the next steps are. In the previous administration, we did a good amount of work in communities that were designated as opportunity zones with high economic distress. Opportunity zones helped communities leverage private sector dollars that might not have otherwise come through. So we actually taught ourselves a little bit more about how projects that are part of a community revitalization effort go from a vision to implementation. And we have guidebooks on how to use different incentives like the Opportunity Zone incentive in funding revitalization projects. And that's what this graphic demonstrates. Just want to sort of, as I wrap up, I just want to mention some of the things that our Region 3 colleagues talk about when they will have conversations with you about your revitalization efforts. Number one, they're going to be helpful in making sure that your efforts support community visions. I know my DOI colleagues talked about that with the Amla program. We will help you figure out ways to remove some of the liability obstacles that might come from revitalizing previously used sites. We have a series of different types of grants, from the Brownfields program to my program, which includes local food, local places, noting the EDA conversation around tourism and travel. We have a little program called Recreation Economy for Rural Communities, where we help smaller communities figure out how to harness the economic driver of a growing rec economy and how that can lead to the revitalization of downtowns and main streets. We also have a number of different screening tools like EJ Screen that can help you identify the most vulnerable populations in the communities where you're doing your work. And again, back to the convenings piece, we are really good in part because we don't have a ton of money, but we're really good at getting folks together on the ground in neighborhoods and in communities. I'm just going to end with some contact information and then some websites that you can connect to see some of the offerings that we have. Community Revitalization Assistance comes from, again, my program, which you can see under the / Community Revitalization, as well as the Smart Growth website. And then land revitalization tools are well cataloged on the EPA.gov land revitalization toolkits. Some of my contact information is here, as well as some of my colleagues from Region 3. And I will ask folks, as the last thing I say, and I'll speak slowly because I know I spoke too fast already, please do sign up for 5-minute one-on-ones with my colleague, Betty, and I think Andrew Taylor is going to be on as well, because we can really be helpful in the early stages of your community revitalization efforts and your early stages of trying to figure out the type of project you're going to present to the Economic Development Administration or to DOI or to USDA in support of your revitalization efforts. So, okay, I think I'm done, Briggs. I'm going to pass it back to you at this point.
Matt, that was great. Thank you for all that information. And next up, we've got Gary Reed from USDA.
Thank you, Briggs. Hi, my name is Gary from USDA. I'm the area director in Western Pennsylvania. USDA Rural Development is the federal agency that helps rural communities grow and prosper. We provide loans, grants, and technical assistance to build critical infrastructure like broadband, water systems, hospitals. We have access to e-connectivity, electric, transportation. We support business growth, healthcare, education, housing, and other community essentials. We have over 40 programs in telecommunication, electric, community facilities, water and environmental, business and cooperative programs, single-family housing, and multifamily housing. I'm going to go in and just kind of mention a couple because I don't think 40 is going to, it's going to be a little large for me to mention them all. So we are going to post the program summary in the, on the website that they're going to present at the end, so that all them, the programs will be there that you can look it over and then give me a call if you have any questions. The one program I want to hit is community facilities. That's eligible to public bodies and nonprofits, and that can be for equipment, building, buildings, infrastructure, things like that. So that can be to municipalities. It just has to be in a rural area of 20,000 population or less. The other one I want to hit is a business and industry loan, which is a guaranteed loan for most types of for-profit businesses. So we can provide the loan guarantee through a lender, and that can be for real estate, machinery, equipment, and it can even be for working capital. And then we have numerous programs in the hot field of broadband. We have the Reconnect program. We have the Rural Broadband program. We have distance learning and telemedicine and a Community Connect. All of are slightly different how they, how they do broadband. It does look like we're going to get a large sum of money from the federal budget that they've passed. So we will we'll see how that goes. So that's all I got. Thank you, Briggs.
Well, that's great, Gary. And so at this point, I will ask the balance of our panelists to turn their videos on, and we'll recreate the feel of a panel discussion here, and we'll have some Q&A. So thank you everybody for that. And if you haven't put your question in the chat, please do so at this point. And why don't we go ahead and get started? Matt, what questions do we have from the audience?
All right, so we've got quite a few actually. So there seem to be a lot of questions about the Department of Interior's Amla program. Some of these questions are about the site requirements. We had a question that asked about, it seems like there's a requirement that the abandoned mine site has to have been from before 1977. And so then there's a question of, for more recent sites, are there other programs that the audience should know about?
Yolanda or Sterling, you want to take that?
Let me take that real quickly. And one of the things with respect to the Amla program is to be mindful of that while it's more focused on abandoned mine lands, there's something also to consider is, okay, if you have an abandoned mine and there were communities which were, let's say, a wider range of communities who were employed or in that area, in that broader demographic area. There are some cases in which, again, it's project specific, in which we could contemplate funding that project under AMLR. Again, it will come down to what the details are, but to your point of more contemporaneous impact on mining communities, we look at those on a site-by-site basis, because we have more details on, sometimes we've released the bond for a site and it could be eligible for funding. So there are some nuances, and I'm sure that PA, Department of Environmental Protection, willing to work with you. We can talk through those nuances.
Okay, and then there's a follow-up question that actually links the AMLR program with, I think, some of the EPA programs. So this is more of a question for both agencies. And it's a question about the difference between remediation costs involved in a project versus more economic development costs and other programmatic costs. Is it typical that you combine funding from EPA and the AMLR program, and that each has its own swim lane with respect to some of these types of costs?
I can jump in here. So it depends on how the project is structured. We've seen projects in which maybe there is a remediation component, and that's the EPA funding being utilized for that. Whereas, let's say they're getting ready to do the building. Once the remediation is completed, they'll put a facility in place. Then that could come from the AMLR money. So it just depends on how the jigsaw puzzle kind of fits together. But the Amla monies could be used for both remediation cost and for construction cost of other facilities or so forth, equipment in some instances too. So again, project specific. Amla does not discriminate against what source of funding is being leveraged here. From our perspective, there's no match. Now, the EPA, they may require a match, and I won't speak to that. I'll have Andrew pick up on that.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I know a little bit more about the assessment side. So actually, I'm going to see if either Andrew or Betty would jump in and sort of give a little bit of a background on some of the way that we would share costs on the remediation side. It's much of the remediation funding, I think, comes from states that, through funding that EPA provides to states. But I don't know, Andrew or Betty, do you guys want to jump in? So it looks like they are not going to jump in. So let me circle back with them and get a better answer rather than me saying something that may be a little bit wrong. Oh no, it looks like Andrew's jumping in.
I'm sorry, Matt. I just had a little technical difficulties. Yeah. It sounds like you have it right regarding this state relationship that we have, but I actually can't speak to more details than what you've provided. But that is something that we should get offline and make available to this group. So I'll work on that right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we had another question for the EPA. So Matthew, it sounded like some of the benefit that you identified from EPA programs is to work on coming up with the financial strategies for local community partners and how to combine federal dollars.
So
do you want to talk a little bit more about that,
yeah,
and how people can access that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways. One is just to start having conversations with our Region 3 folks, because we are so interested in seeing land that has already had development on it, identified, assessed for environmental challenges, cleaned up, and then reused, right? And noting that all those things that I just mentioned before the reuse often is contingent upon there being an economic reason to use the land. We are very interested in knowing that, or helping communities figure out how to increase the economic use of land. So our Region 3 colleagues, and this is something you can talk to them about in the afternoon, are always interested in helping figure out the end use of a previously developed site. There's that. There are technical assistance projects and programs that my office offers around, again, identifying economic drivers and helping those economic drivers be harnessed for the reuse of land. On the epa.gov/smartgrowth website, you can see when we offer those. Our Brownfields program and our Superfund program also have different types of ways to help make sure that communities can get together, identify visions, and then begin to look at the final reuse of property. Whenever any of us work on the ground in communities, we are going to bring in our federal partners that we know, whether they're out of the regional offices, like EDA has theirs in Philadelphia, or the state USDA office is particularly rural development. Our HUD office, I know that there's a HUD office in Pittsburgh. We worked with folks there. We can help communities figure out what their vision is, what the next steps that they want to do, and put them in touch with federal partners who are interested in helping those communities do the revitalization. When it comes to particular projects around opportunity zones, we do have some experience doing that. We did that over the last couple of years. We have examples of how that works and how that incentive, which still exists, can be used to help with revitalization. And then the last thing, I will say that we do also have guidebooks on ways for communities to leverage all of the different incentives that exist at the state level, the local level, and the federal level to help projects that would not have otherwise penciled because of economic distress pencil. And that can be helpful too.
Great, thank you. So I have a couple of questions for Kate for the Department of Energy. One question is, given NETL's location here in this region, can or should applicants for DOE funding partner with NETL on their applications? And maybe that's for Kate and for Briggs, since Briggs, you're from NETL.
First, I'm going to say, can you hear me better now? I messed with my microphone. No better? I don't know what's WebEx is not happy with me today. But that is, I think, actually a Briggs question. So I'm off the hook for a second. So over to Briggs.
Yeah, so I think there are certain offices within the department where we, NETL, implement their funding opportunities, in which case we are not eligible to receive those funds due to that conflict. But by and large, most of the department we can actually partner and compete for. So as an example, we don't administer any funds for EERE's Advanced Manufacturing Office. And so NETL can partner on work related to that. We don't administer anything for ARPA-E, so we could participate on a proposal in response to ARPA-E. So there's lots of things that NETL can do, and I would encourage you first read the funding opportunity. And if NETL is not specifically identified as a already ineligible applicant, then in all likelihood we're already eligible. But also please reach out to us. We have people that can work with you as a first point of contact, and I put my contact information in here. I'd be happy to connect you as well.
And I will just say to that point, I put mine in as well, that one of the, compared to the other agencies you're hearing from, DOE is at a little disadvantage. We don't have the kind of regional or state network that some of these other agencies do, but Briggs and I are both very willing to connect you to the right people across the agency and across NETL. So please do take advantage of that. We recognize that's a little bit of a different way in, but we're willing to do the work. And I will say that at DOE, a big part of my job is to start making it easier for people to access our programs, because we recognize that we really do need to improve that interface. So really look forward to working with you guys.
Great. So here's another DOE focused question. So this is obviously from someone with a new technology. They're saying the DOE loan program traditionally has seemed focused on very large projects. What are the best resources for smaller scale up projects and pilot projects for new technologies?
Yeah, that is true. The DOE Loan Program Office generally focuses on large scale energy infrastructure projects. That's been their traditional focus, and has about $40 billion in loans and loan guarantees. The reason it's focused there is that in order to be a project that works for a loan or a loan guarantee, you need to have a certain amount of tax, exposure, and you need to sort of be at a particular size. However, the other programs that we talked about under EERE, which has many programs, as well as under the fossil energy program, are a better place to look, frankly, for smaller programs. And that does mean kind of looking across them to find the right way in. But in general, what LPO has said is, best to look at some of those other programs. On the other hand, and I'll put this in the chat, LPO is very responsive. And so what they say is, look, send us a note with what you're thinking about, and we'll make sure it goes to the right place. So I'll put that email in the chat right now, because it's a great way in, frankly, for that question. And then Briggs, you've done a lot of work with EERE and fossil energy. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think the applied energy offices within the department are the place to go for this kind of thing. In general, they work in the TRL, or technology readiness levels, between 2, which is sort of, you've got an idea, but you don't know if it'll work, all the way up to a pre-commercial stage. Once something is commercial, or at least first of a kind and ready to be demonstrated at fully commercial scale, then you really go either into a demonstration line of funding, of which there's not a lot of that out right now. Congress appropriates that, or through the LPO. And I would also point out that USDA Rural Development has funds for large scale building out of energy technologies as well, and perhaps other agencies too.
That's a great segue because the next question is for Gary from USDA. So the question is simply for the community facilities program that you described, is there a typical range of amount for those grants or funding assistance?
Well, it's generally a loan program with a very small portion on grants, so it's going to be mostly loan, and there really isn't a top, like a maximum. It would be more dictated on what you can afford and what you need than really, maximum amount.
Okay, and then we've got almost the same question for Yolan and Sterling for the Amla program. Is there a typical project size or a range of sizes for those projects?
No, I mean, since you have different states involved, it all depends on each state has their own way of soliciting projects. So it can be from a small project to a large project, as long as they meet the qualifications of being a abandoned mine land impacted or coal mining impacted history, and as well as something that has an economic and a community redevelopment. So those key components are the criteria that's used. So it can be a large, small project all the way up to a large project.
Excellent. And for those projects, there's a question about deadlines for applications, but I think you told us that applications go to the state for those projects. So do you know, is there a specific deadline, or is this more of a rolling process where people work with the state?
I could jump in and Yolanda could finish up. Well, since it's appropriated money each year, first we had to wait for the money to get appropriated, and then we have to go through a number of financial assistance requirements before we can release the money, to the states, and then the states then file an application, and then that's when they can release the money for projects solicitation. So it may sound arduous the way I'm explaining it, but it's based on once the money get appropriated, and then the process goes from there. I don't know if you want to add anything, Elaine.
Yeah, let me just jump in. So the specific question is, is it on a rolling basis or is it a defined period? For Pennsylvania, it appears to be on a rolling basis in which projects are selected, and what Sterling described is more of our internal process for releasing the monies to the state of Pennsylvania. But once they have it, they're continually evaluating and determining what projects would be eligible, whether it in this fiscal year or the upcoming fiscal year. I know that they like to keep a couple in queue for the next cycle. So I would definitely encourage everyone who is definitely interested is just go ahead and submit your project proposal directly to Pennsylvania, and we'll do the hard part working with the state and ensure that the money is released. So yeah.
Thank you. And then very similar question for Jen from ARC. We know that the power program, its last deadline was in the spring, and hypothetically the next one might be in the spring. Are there other programs that people should be looking at with other deadlines in the nearer term?
Yeah, I would say to clarify on the power program, we don't quite know what our deadline's going to be, given, we may have a significant increase. We may, I don't want to, either jinx it or bring up any hopes, but so it may be a little bit earlier this year. We're not sure yet. On the area development programs in Pennsylvania, for example, I had to ask Neil Fowler this question, and they generally have a deadline in August, and yet they will accept rolling pre-applications. And so I encourage folks to reach out to Neil or the local development districts that I had referenced earlier. On the INSPIRE program, which was the substance use disorder recovery ecosystem program, and on the work program, those deadlines have passed. And so I would anticipate, not knowing exactly what the future funding is going to look like. Something in the spring or summer of next year would likely be released. So not definitive deadlines there, but because we're sort of waiting to see what happens, but definitely on the area development side. But I did say this, and I want to underline this. People should start working on their applications, perhaps looking at some of our past requests for proposals. And as they're working on putting together projects for these other funding streams, that they think about how ARC could fit into the larger project. So getting your partnerships together now, thinking about that. Again, we do currently it's $1.5 million. I don't know if that's going to go up per project, and $50,000 for planning projects, which could lead to the 1.5 million project, with a successful plan. So it's still up in the air, but we'll make sure that we communicate through this group. And I know Neil, gets this information out regularly to people in the community. But that's what I love about the interagency working group, is that we have an even greater opportunity to share one another's deadlines and resources as they come up. So.
Terrific. Thank you. And just checking the sign up form for this afternoon's one-on-one slots. It looks like there are still some available, although they seem to be going fast. So just to encourage everyone to follow the link that's in the chat box if you want to sign up for a 15-minute meeting this afternoon with one of the agency reps from any of these agencies. And with that, Briggs, I'll hand it back over to you.
Well, that's great. First of all, I want to thank the agencies that spoke today. Thank you for your slides and your comments and your participation, and also making your reps available for this afternoon. Just a couple of reflections. One, today we heard about the importance of getting out early and being prepared, particularly with respect to the impending deadline for the Build Back Better Regional Challenge of October 19th for the EDA funding opportunity, which really encourages coalitions. But additionally, we learned about all these other federal agencies that have resources from planning and technical assistance to actual investment in projects. And again, a big thanks to the federal agencies for participating. I pointed out the EDA announcement and the Build Back Regional Challenge. We certainly hope that Western Pennsylvania, and in fact the whole state and the region, will benefit from that. And that'll only occur for those larger projects if coalitions occur. So if there's anything that we can do, in addition to having this workshop, that really was the intent of the workshop. Ideally, we would have been in person. But if there's anything that we can do with our convening force to bring folks together to build those coalitions, happy to do that. Let us know. Additionally, I want to thank everyone that participated, not just the community economic development organizations and local elected officials, albeit you are clearly the catalyst for everything here, but also the ecosystem of both state level officials and philanthropy and otherwise that might provide the cost share. We understand that cost share is a significant barrier, particularly in rural communities, that also might be challenged with respect to the capacity to both submit a proposal and implement it. And so, again, thank you for your participation. Hopefully you can provide the cost share or help work with organizations that can help them reduce that barrier as much as possible. And again, we're happy to help, whether it's the interagency working group or with our agencies. I want to close by also thanking our staff that have put this together and the agencies that have collaborated with us on this workshop, our partners outside of the federal government that gave us insights and helped us make sure that we put this together in a smart way, that it was useful and added value, and that we invited the right people so that hopefully we've convened folks that will ultimately create good things for Western Pennsylvania. With that, I think we're going to end a little bit early here, so we'll give you some time back in your day. Again, I do want to really encourage you to sign up if you haven't already for some one-on-ones, and let us know if there's anything else that we can do to help out. And so with that, why don't we go ahead and conclude today's event. And again, thank you very much.